This is episode 2 of Radio ArtEZ, a podcast by Studium Generale ArtEZ. So, one of the things Studium Generale and Radio ArtEZ in particular are a platform for is student stories. We are working with some students right now on podcast stories, but there's always room for more. The Studium Generale staff do excellent programming, and these programs are a lot of fun to put into podcast form, but we also want to hear from you, and we also would like others to hear from you. Maybe we can feature your work in a future episode. If this is something that has your interest, get in touch with us. And as you may have gathered from the title, the episode you're listening to right now features student stories. They're specific students, namely students in the honors program. And to help me put these stories into perspective, I met up with one of the coordinators of that program. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I could. I am Germano and I coordinate and I teach in the honors program. Yeah, that would be me.
So what is the honors program?
The honors program is a very special thing to ArtEZ. It is an extra program that we have for all the bachelor students that they can apply for to follow in their second and third year. And this is for students who want more, so who want to be challenged more, specifically who want to be challenged more intellectually. So they come and do theory and research with us.
So I think the last year you had a special focus?
Yeah, for our first year honors program students, we usually take one theme that we work on throughout the year and then we explore several aspects of that theme. Last year we were looking at new materialist philosophy, and then we have 3 teachers in the honors program and we all take responsibility for one track within that first year, and my track focused on the body in art, as the body as a means of signification, and on the white body. So it focused a lot on whiteness, representation of whiteness as something that is constructed and something that is performed, that is performative. So we dealt a lot with post-colonial theory, but also thinking about the body as something that thinks, to look at the body-mind split.
And one of the assignments, if I'm correct, was to hand something in audio in a podcast form.
Yeah, and the honors program, we don't like to give our students too many conventional theoretical assignments. So if sometimes students will actually write a more classical essay, but what is nice is that we have an interdisciplinary group. So we have these students from all disciplines within ArtEZ joined together. So we have a group with, say, 1 creative writer and then 2 dancers and someone who was playing drums. And what has worked really well is to challenge them to take theory and research and to turn it into something more unconventional. So for this block, I asked them to create a podcast, which is really nice because we had 6 or 7 weeks of really hard work looking at from all kinds of perspectives, looking at the white body in art, reading really dense, difficult texts, and then they took a much more personal and much more poetic approach to it when they created a podcast. So they created a set of podcasts that are both like well-informed and researched, but the outcomes are much more unexpected, I think, and playful, and sometimes downright strange than the outcome you would expect from a program that does research.
Yeah. Not all of them are essays.
No, and I think, you could also say that they are all essays.
Yeah.
That this is what an essay should look like. Because they do all make a point, even the ones that you listen to and you just get confused in the beginning. I think they each do this strategically and intelligently. So, yeah, I would say that they are all essays.
And of course the word essay comes from experiment, to try something.
Yeah, trying something. They are definitely, what I really like about these podcasts is that students have been really ambitious and daring, trying stuff out. Just really, the genre of the podcast was new to most of them. And they were also really eager to look at what is this medium of the sound and the voice, and what can we do with it differently than just speak and explain something clearly and in a linear way. That was really nice.
So maybe we should just go ahead and listen.
Yeah, let's just dive in and listen. This first podcast is called The Gaze Without Eyes. It is a solo podcast, and it's made by Ida Leiting.
Before listening to this podcast, please accept the terms and conditions.
We've been working on this for a while, and I'm excited to introduce for you a new service called Amazon Recognition Video, which does real-time and batch video analytics.
One of the world's giant retailers, the British supermarket chain Tesco, is to kick off facial recognition technology to improve its advertising strategy.
Sky News has learned that more than 20 million facial images are now held by the police, which could correspond to nearly a third of the UK population.
Using technology called skeleton modeling, we're able to track a person even if they're not in the shot and know whether they're still in the frame or not.
The Hawthorne effect is the tendency we have to perform better when we know somebody is studying us.
The primary means will be a vast network of CCTV cameras. 170 million are already in place.
What does the privacy of our bodies mean in the context of the gaze without eyes? The gaze of the surveillance camera.
Privacy, a state in which one is not observed or disturbed by other people.
Now, there's a reason why privacy is so craved universally and instinctively. The reason is that when we're in a state where we can be monitored, where we can be watched, our behavior changes dramatically. The range of behavioral options that we consider when we think we're being watched severely reduce. Human shame is a very powerful motivator, and that's the reason why people, when they're in a state of being watched, make decisions not that are the byproduct of their own agency, but that are about the expectations that others have of them, or the mandates of societal orthodoxy. Now, there's a reason
concept of space, as derived from Foucault, is understood as a fundamental basis for the exercise of power. In contemporary architecture, power is hidden and unnoticeable, and authority is represented not through its visibility, but rather through its invisibility. According to Foucault, the control performed upon our urban space is to be explained through the concept of the panopticon, a circular building with an observation tower in the center, commonly used for imprisonment. The inmate of the panoptic prison must never know whether he is being looked at, but he must be sure of the possibility of being watched every moment. In a panoptic prison, the gaze is enough. There is no need for arms, physical violence, material constraints, as being constantly aware of being controlled by invisible overseers causes the internalization of control. Whilst the prisoner is physically trapped in the panoptic, it is actually his psyche that is prioritized to be trapped. Similarly, in our current urban space, there is no escaping of cameras. They are installed all around the globe. The Netherlands containing an estimated 1.5 million cameras, whilst an American citizen is caught about 75 times a day. The ever-visible inmate, Foucault suggests, is always the object of information, never a subject in communication. The power accompanied with the gaze of the surveillance camera is thus sensitive for abuse. Although its use is commonly justified as a means for preserving safety, modern techniques like facial recognition and fully self-learning behavioral analytics help both companies and governments to profile people based on their visual behavior and appearance, therefore creating categories based on gender, ethnicity, age, consumer behavior, etc., enabling institutions to legally or illegally analyze and control people's behavior in the urban and sometimes even domestic space, for example, publicly shaming jaywalkers in China. The question seems to be, how not to be seen.
Resolution determines visibility. Whatever is not captured by resolution is invisible.
In 2014, a new satellite was launched called the Worldview 3. It's the first commercial satellite to have a 25 centimeter resolution. That means that each pixel of the picture is the equivalent to 25 by 25 centimeters.
And the second podcast is called Dance and Disability. It is made by Rosie Stebbing, Ornella Dufay-Miral, and Marita Schwamm.
Hi, I'm Rosie. And I'm Ornella. So we're here to speak about disability in dance, and our question was how dance can redefine disability. So as dancers, we kind of always confronted to our limits most of the time, because we are asked to do some movements that our body is not used to do, or that yet we never experienced. And so this requires really to listen to our capacity and how to deal with it in order to dance and to express in a clear way the body sensations or experiences. And then it felt really interesting to question how people recognized as disabled people would express their body sensation. And this actually personally led me to this other question. Then what is the idea of being disabled has to do with expressing a body sensation? And then is there really disability in dance? So, and that was actually a title of a podcast, a French podcast that I heard. And the title was Is There Disability? And I found it really interesting how the sociologist Romuald Bodin pointed out the fact that disability would not be well defined in a medical way, but in order to understand it better, it would require to see it more as a social matter. Because biomedically, disability, it's having deficiencies or a lack of something that doesn't work well. But if we see it more in a social way, when someone is pointed out as disabled, what is judged on a person is a way of being in a certain context. And this way of being refers to the disability level. And this sociologist was saying that it's the institution that creates a certain system that points out disability. And disabled people tend to be judged as fragile people, but in fact, it's the presence of a different way of being that fragilize the functionment of a system. So here, what is really interesting is how the sociologists make the environment, this word that refers to surroundings and everything that's around something really central. Because then, when we think about dance, it's in a way creating an environment where we can include all ways of being. And this is the power of dance, creating always movements, because nothing is really still in fact on this planet. No?
So you mean when you speak about institutions, that ability or disability is really only framed by the context of what you're able to do in a certain environment, rather than
I would not say only, but mainly, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's interesting. This idea of having these different contexts or institutions. So there's a context of everyday life or the culture you're brought up in, and then how the context of dance or performance can be so different to this. And like you mentioned, ways of being. And also the point that a disabled person and a different way of being maybe threatens established system or institution that seems to work for everybody else, but really it doesn't work that well if it's not working for everybody. I think that the concepts of live and corpore are something really interesting here. I read about them in the article that we will reference at the end. And they're concepts that come from phenomenological tradition, and they deal with how we relate to bodies. So the concept of Leib is to be a body, and the concept of Körper is to have a body. And I think that this distinction was summed up pretty well by Professor Jenny Satman at Tilburg University. She said that the Körper is the body that is seen and the Leib is the body that is seeing. And then when we put this into the context of how disabled people are often viewed in society, we see that disabled bodies are often seen as being in a state of Körper. Because the body is, being pitted against able bodies and is seen as abnormal, a disabled person is maybe being seen as having less of a lived experience and more of an objectified being. We felt that one artwork which really illustrates these questions which we've been exploring is the dance film The Cost of Living by Deviate Physical Theatre. The music which you've just heard is from one scene which we found interesting to watch and think about through the lens of the Leib and Körper concepts. One of the lead dancers in the film, David Toole, has no legs. In this scene, David sits alone on the grass of a hill. When the music starts, he lifts himself up and moves from side to side on his hands in time with the waltz. Suddenly, a group of dancers appear from under the hill behind him. They move as he does, transferring weight from hand to hand while dragging their legs behind them. It's fascinating and moving to see able-bodied dancers interpret movement which comes from Toole's characteristic way of moving.
Yes, this image of the ensemble made me think of the term corps de ballet. This is the term for the large ensemble in a ballet company. In French, corps means body. The dancers come together to create one body which is lived in the Leib experience. This is a scene of lives moving together, coming together in a state of difference, but finding a way to move and be in unison. In a social aspect, this is a perfect example of how dance creates space for us to redefine how we think about disability and the lived experience. At the start of the podcast, I referred to a point made by the sociologists that disabled people can threaten the stability of a system or institution which was established without their abilities in mind. However, in this scene, Toole has inspired the choreography of the other dancers. They have built something together, creating a new system in which the difference between the dancers connects them.
Before we end the podcast, we'd like to mention some sources which we used during our research. Ornella referenced the podcast Y a-t-il des handicapés from the France Culture radio channel. I referenced the article Differences in Itself, Redefining Disability Through Dance by Caroline Hermans, and the film which we spoke about at the end of the podcast is The Cost of Living by Deviate Physical Theatre. Thanks for listening.
The next podcast is called Chronic Back Pain, and it's made by a group of students who went into a museum together and took their experience to create this podcast. And it's been made by Laura Haverkort, Cas Torsen, Jurel Bakker, Rosanne Kratocci and Julia van Eyde.
Yes, I did.
I did.
I did have some kind of concern about whether or not it would be art.
Whether or not it would be art. I knew it would be good. Then I realized that it could not be art
because I was an artist. So that solved that problem.
It was a radical sculpture.
It was a radical sculpture for the time.
It was an important
part of its making. It did
was
not
that
have signs
it did not have signs of belonging to fine art.
It never occurred to me that I was providing a perfect image to encapsulate the militant feminist position through woman.
Militant feminist position. The women
was seen
as an object. And
here's the incontrovertibly. It's a hand
figure,
to be a female figure, and it's plainly an object.
Something for whatever reason
you make it. For whatever reason you make it. There's no accounting for it. It's how it will resonate with people, because it's between the viewer and the object.
It's between the viewer and the object. I view
it with some kind of irony,
I suppose. That although I see
myself as a painter, really, and the sculptures that have come out of my painting, preoccupations, that actually the most memorable thing I made has been
a sculpture.
I am lying on my back, my legs folded against my chest, my feet in the air. Am I really who he says I am? He says my skin and flesh are made of plastic. I am not real. But am I not also a woman? My skin resembles so much of her. My flesh contains so much more than just the artificial fibers that are holding me together. For I am not just made of plastic, but of the memories that have gone before me, have happened while I was lying here, and of those who are yet to come. So do not tell me what it is that I am. When you exclude so much, deny my form has a history, so much bigger than you could ever comprehend. As I am lying here, on the soft rock you put under me, I know I am so much more, and will mean so much more than you could have ever imagined.
Hi, Chair. I am Do Women Have to Be Naked to Get into the Met Museum? I hope you can hear me. Behind you, I feel less powerful. I feel small, and this is not because I'm only 27.9 by 71.1 centimeters, or because you are 20 years older than me, or the fact that you are worth so much more money than me. I feel powerless because the statement I'm trying to tell here is pushed into the ground because of you here, in front of me. The words on me are trying to get to the public. The colors of me are trying to catch some eyes. The symbolism of me is not hard to understand, but it's not working. When someone looks at me, they are seeing you as well. Even if people are trying to really get me, you are in my way. This whole room full of male artists are in my way of proving a point. I stand for equality in the art world. I want to see as many women and men artists in a room like this. I feel useless hanging here if people do not listen to me or see me behind you. For you, Chair, I'm literally not visible. The latter parts of you, which are supposed to be kinky, I guess, are in your way of seeing me hanging here. Like most artists in this room, you're made by a white man. I want to tell you something. Chair, people see you as an object, but I think you are so much more than that. I don't want to see you laying on the ground there. I want you to become more than an object. Stand up and show the world you are more. You are not just a body.
I feel something. I feel something aching. I think it's my back. I feel something moving. I think it's my arm. I moved. The ground is cold and I feel cold. There's a strap around my body. I'm gonna unbuckle it. I am able to move my legs. I have legs. My back still aches. Maybe if I move around, can I stand? What are these things on my feet? How am I able to stand on these? Can I untie them? Much. Who are these people? They look right at me. I feel dizzy. Where am I? There are so many rooms here. Is there an end to this? All the people walk in this direction. Maybe there's an exit. I'm scared. They're still looking at me. Don't they see I'm cold and confused? I'm so cold. Is there a wardrobe in the distance? Maybe I can loan a coat. And I need to find help. Then I'll return it. This feels so much better. There's an exit sign. Oh, this door handle is heavy.
The next podcast is a solo podcast made by a single student, and she's called Celine Kali. And the title is The Mediated Female Body Towards the Sexual Body and the Anorexic Body.
Women constantly meet glances which act like mirrors, reminding them of how they look or how they should look. Behind every glance is a judgment. Sometimes the glance they meet is their own, reflected back from a real mirror.
John Berger talks in his TV series Ways of Seeing inter alia about the female nude or the mediated female body. And exactly the title already, Ways of Seeing, is something that got me stuck there. It implies both something that is being seen at, but also something that sees by itself. Think of the illustration of Venus, or the figure of Maria, or Leonardo's Mona Lisa or Manet's Olympia. In a Western culture I grew up in, the female body was also always a body that was either sexualized, a body that represented pure untouched beauty, or both, an available body.
And a body being put on display. To be naked is to be without disguise. To be on display is to have the surface of one's own skin, the hairs of one's own body, turned into a disguise which cannot be discarded.
This image of the female body finds its grotesque climax in porn. And so in the 1970s, anti-pornography movements wanted to stop this humiliation. However, what Helen MacDonald described was that banning porn was quite difficult because it would be then also a reinforcement for misogynist, for conservative, for anti-feminist to discard diversity in sexual pleasure altogether. Between sexuality and the objectified woman, there's still a difference, as there is a difference between the naked and the nude. And so what has to be negotiated is the representation. MacDonald wrote that pornography flooded the media and information networks. Children were sexualized to become models, and models posed as corpses to sell expensive clothes.
What do you see? A woman, blonde, skin-tight dress, red lips, watermelon breasts, huh? A cock the size of a stallion's, between her pursed lips. She's giving him a blowjob.
Starting in 2006, Germany's Next Top Model is still on air. It is a casting show whose format is existing in many other countries as well, but whose core never was to be better in something, but to be prettier, to be slimmer, and to be more feminine than the others. And so, what I find hilarious is how Heidi Klum gives an actual image to the girls if they pass. So, their value is basically tied to their beauty. Cultural ideals of thinness of women, of needing to be beautiful, are part of a way of seeing which is in disorder.
Oh, I heard she's back to her birth weight. Must be nice. Ew.
No, the body on this mannequin is all wrong.
I know! It's such an unrealistic standard for young... Huh?
Planing down the thighs, planing down the thighs. I make $4 an hour, planing down the thighs.
I stumbled upon Megan Warren, who defines The anorexic body as a figure of abjection. Quoting Julia Kristeva, who has wrote the probably most popular interpretation of abjection. On the edge of non-existence and hallucination, of a reality that, if I acknowledge it, annihilates me, there abject and abjection are my safeguards.
While she is walking across a room or weeping at the death of her father, she cannot avoid envisaging herself walking or weeping. From earliest childhood, she is taught and persuaded to survey herself continually.
It is a twixt relationship of the outside and the inside, and the body as something that embodies its in-betweenness. The anorexic body is a place where meaning collapses and where the relationships of ways of seeing have to be redefined. Firstly, the look at an anorexic body from the outside is something that threatens the other. The viewer looking at it, well, most certainly looks at it as if it would be seeing a corpse. And this nagging sensation of death lets the viewer go to the subject and just say, "Why don't you just eat?" Without knowing most of the times that the sensation of the object appears also in the subject itself. A feeling of disgust towards oneself. The object appears in a feeling of not being at home in one's own body. The feeling of losing one's ground for belonging. And yet, also a phobic desire which is never releasing its hold. It's in constant state of comparing, a sadistic obsession of control. It's a world lived in distortion. And what feeds it, what waters this little seed of dissatisfaction, when it is still quite young, is this propagandic image of beauty, the objectified body, the notion of being looked at.
The next podcast is called Kiwi, and it's been created by Laila Rodriguez, Elsa de Jong, Andy Galanatoro, Pelumi Adeyumo, and Katrijn Westland.
What does my female voice represent? What does my female voice represent?
All sounds can be brought back to vibrations.
Hi, Jacqueline. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. How was your day?
My days, well, I'm with people from school, and we're doing and we're doing an assignment. And I was wondering, how do you say in Yoruba? I'm Pelumi and this is my voice.
Soy Elsa y esta es mi voz. Orúkọ mi ni Andrea, òun mi sì nìyí.
Ana Pelumi, Waheda Soti.
Ik ben Laila and dit is my stem.
Your voice is part of your body, an oral extension. It's both internal and external. It's both physical and mental.
I feel a sense of achievement that I have managed to make these contributions, despite having ALS. I have not allowed my disability to stop me doing most things. My motto is there are no boundaries. Thank you.
Do I like waterfalls? Do I sound like I like waterfalls? Who doesn't like waterfalls? Does someone sound like they don't like waterfalls? Do I sound like I made this up? How does someone sound when they make something up? What do I look like? Do I have blue eyes? Red cheeks? Do I have freckles?
I do in a way. However, I'm terribly grateful for everything that's happened, because I remember when things weren't like this at all. But you do miss sometimes just being able to be completely yourself and someplace and people just know you as another human being.
When your tone changes, your body transforms with it.
Would you call me when you're lonely?
How does the voice dictate?
What are you hearing?
Is your accent a part of your perceived identity?
It's your body that situates your voice, and your voice that situates your body.
You get on the bus, and before greeting the bus driver you pause. Fill your belly with air. You think of that sound at the back of your throat and say, Goedemorgen, as integrated as you can. You say your name. They repeat it, slightly off. You say your name. They repeat it, slightly off, slightly grinning. You say your name. They repeat it, slightly off, slightly grinning.
In mijn shirt te lopen, ik raak nooit verstrikt in losse veters. Oh nee. En natte sokken die worden uiteindelijk droog. En natte sokken die worden uiteindelijk droog.
This is the last podcast, and the last podcast is in Dutch. It's called Dat wat er gedacht wordt, and it's been made by Jolijn Amorisson, Malika Soudani, Celine Reurige, Maaike Tonnen en Charlotte Rakwiet.
De stelling van Pythagoras. Geest. In continuum. Dit lichaam. In driedimensionale gewaarwording. Een uit één stuk opgebouwde deelverzameling van reële getallen tot een macht 3. Dat betekent dat bekend is welke gebieden binnen en buiten het lichaam vallen. Onmogelijk. Een echo in de ruimte, verrotten in een vacuüm, dit lichaam het jouwe noemen, dit lichaam het mijne noemen, dit lichaam gevangen in geluid. Dit lichaam in de ruimte. Adem uit. Er bubbelen nog 15 seconden aan zuurstof rond in de bloedsomloop. Mensenhuid is sterk genoeg om bij opzwelling van het lichaam niet te ontploffen. Het vocht op de tong begint te koken. De huid knapt niet, maar verbrandt. Is het warm? Een lichaam mummificeert. Is het koud? Een lichaam zweeft miljoenen jaren door de ruimte. Dit lichaam niet. Dit lichaam suist, dit lichaam bruist, dit lichaam kronkelt, dit lichaam overleeft dit lichaam niet. Er is iets. Het beweegt. Het is niks om over te praten, er is niks te horen, er valt niks over te weten, er is niks om vast te houden, het is iets om van te houden. Er zijn geen ogen om mee te kijken, kijk niet om. Er is niks te zien. Censuur gaat. Censuur is. Ongecensureerd, gewoon doen, geen verplichting tot verantwoording. Wind, luchtstroom, toevoer, luchtdruk, alle uithoeken van de wereld, druk, wereld, werelddruk. Ik. Ontastbaar, onzichtbaar, ik. Aanwezig in de ruimte. Stop, ga niet door, denk niet na. Vlieg zonder vleugels, kijk zonder kijkers, onthoud zonder schuld. Er is niks te zien in spiegels. Er valt niks te weerspiegelen, er is alleen maar dat wat er gedacht wordt.
So Isis, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Maybe if we have students listening and want to get into the honors program, how do they do this?
Well, if they want to get involved in the honors program, there is the easier, more accessible way, which is just to come to our public talks. Once in a while, every month or 2 months, we organize a session with our with the students that are already in the honors program that is open to all students within ArtEZ. So if you check your email, I know you guys don't always because you get overflown with mails, but just check your email or look specifically for the honors program emails and you will be invited to public events. They are an easier way to get a sense of what we are doing. And if you want to follow the full 2-year program, then you apply for this when you are in your first year. The application procedure is in April. In April, we have a sneak preview, so we have one evening that you can come to us and that we give you an introduction. I come to first-year classes to explain about the honors program. I can't always make it to all first-year classes, but we do strive to do this. And we also will announce the sneak preview and the deadline for application via email and via your teachers.
Yeah, so you should look between all the emails you get from
definitely
ICT and the cantina.
Yeah, and we promise we don't send too many emails, so we won't harass you when it's not necessary. Just look for us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.